And it's Ken Kreitzer for Week 4 of the West Point Football Report with John Juran. And we're at the Sports Page restaurant in downtown White Plains, New York, for this edition of West Point Football Report, a program of Sons of the American Legion Radio and Squadron 135 in White Plains. And John Juran, Army had a very disappointing Saturday afternoon down at Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, and they get a chance to redeem themselves and even their record this Saturday up at Yale University in New Haven.
Absolutely, Ken. Army, the Black Knights, had a lead going into the second half. They were leading 21-14. Unfortunately, they were shut out for the second straight week in the second half. This is a serious problem if they can't get that back on track, but they wound up giving up 10 fourth-quarter points to their opponents that past week, and they wound up with a 24-21 loss, and it was very painful because Wake Forest really was not a team that we expected them to lose to. This is a team comprised mostly of freshmen, mostly of sophomores, a young team. You thought that this was going to be a team that Army could handle, but one of the most disappointing things to me was the fact that Wake Forest beat them in the penalty category. I mean, Wake Forest had 4 penalties for 30 yards. Army had 7 penalties for 57 yards. And you can't do that against a weaker opponent. You have to take advantage, and Army did not do that this week.
That's correct. Disappointing on the penalties. It seemed like the offense is still not quite set, learning the new system brought in by Coach Monken from Georgia Southern with the offensive coaches. And for a team to play its best on offense, you've really got to know the offense instinctively so that as soon as the quarterback starts the play, changes the play at the line of scrimmage, you know exactly what to do, which way to move. And it takes a while for that symmetry to really be in play. Certainly playing Stanford was a challenge because when you're playing against players at that level, you're thinking about them sometimes rather than what you're doing yourself. So that's been a factor. Army ran the ball very nicely at Wake Forest, 340 yards rushing, but they only passed the ball for 18 yards in the game, and so that's going to be a struggle. 341 yards is good. That's a standard Army rushing day, and was probably good enough to win. But they've got to find a way to mix up their offense a little bit. 3 of 5 passing for 18 yards isn't going to do it. And, they may be able to get by this week, just running the ball. But then they've got 2 very tough games back-to-back at Michie Stadium with Ball State and then Rice University coming in.
You're exactly right, Ken. The quarterback situation, the passing game really has to get in gear, but we can't overlook the running back situation. Even though Army ran for 341 yards, I'm concerned by the fact that certain players just haven't touched the ball. Through the first 3 games, Terry Baggett has carried the ball just 16 times. Raymond Maples has carried the ball just 15 times. These are players that need to get in the mix. Now, Coach Monken says that for them to be effective, for them to get more touches, they have to establish an attack up the middle, and right now they have not yet done that, and so that's a problem. But I think for this team to succeed, they need to balance out with Larry Dixon. They need to have Baggett and Maples both carry the ball in a fairly equitable manner so that the opposition can't be sure who's going to get the ball and how they can defend against it.
Yes, and also the pitch out, the one lost between Angel Santiago and Joe Walker late in the game really hurt. I mean, the pitch out is a fundamental part of the triple option offense, and it can be the biggest gaining play if the connection is made. But it's high risk because it is a lateral. It's a loose football, and we've seen it happen in some crucial situations at Michie Stadium and on the road in past years of a fumbled pitch out. And that really hurt Army late in the game when they were deep in Wake Forest territory and they had the fumble on a pitch out.
That's true. Quarterback Angel Santiago, he's done, if I were giving letter grades, I would say he so far has performed at a level of a B player. I wouldn't give him an A yet because the fact is really hasn't thrown the ball that much, but he really also hasn't held on to the ball. He's fumbled the ball a few times, including in a key situation, 3rd and 20 in this game against Wake Forest, against the Demon Deacons. Then you have the muffed pitch out to Walker, and it just doesn't work out. I mean, right now he's got some problems. He's still got to work out the kinks, and that's going to be necessary if they're going to succeed against Yale on Saturday.
That's true, and avoiding mistakes, avoiding turning the ball over on offense is the key for Army to be successful and to complete their drives. And we've seen Larry Dixon run well, but mostly running the dive play inside, and then the outside gains being done by Ray Maples and Terry Baggett. We haven't really seen Ray Maples break open yet this year, and that's something that we really look forward to, because this is kind of the best backfield Army has had probably in decades, when you have 3 runners who are going to finish their careers this year in the top 10 in Army rushing history in Terry Baggett, in Ray Maples, and Larry Dixon. And then you have a senior quarterback in Angel Santiago. So this is the year that, kind of the offense has been waiting for, to have this number of seniors. I mean, we've had so many years where we had freshmen, sophomores in key spots. This year we have a lot of seniors on the Army team. It's interesting on the defense, which played well really all the season, I would say, except for the fourth quarter against Buffalo when they struggled. But Jeremy Timp has been a big positive for Army at the inside linebacker. He had 8 tackles in this game, and Andrew King had 4 tackles. He had 7 tackles for Army against Wake Forest, and Stephen Johnson, coming in at a safety, had 7 tackles. Josh Jenkins, again, a very good player at the corner, and Jeff Bacon at the free safety had 6 tackles. What you're seeing, though, is not a lot of tackles by the interior linemen for Army. The inside linebackers and the safeties are making the plays, which can be okay. But what we see this year is the defensive linemen have been able to hold their own much better. And you're playing all the seniors with Bobby Coe and Mike Eugeni and Joe Drummond right in the middle, and of course Rich Glover, and kind of switching on and off with TJ Altamala. Army's got the most solid defensive line that they've had since the bowl team with Josh McNary and Mike Gann, who were such a good defensive line. And, of course, McNary was Army's sack leader. The challenge for Army on defense is they've got to find a way to rush the passer and put some pressure on. And this is a chance against Yale to see what they can do, whether it's starting to run blitz linebackers or even a safety on occasion. Something you see more in the NFL than you see in college. But Army's got to find a way to break through and put pressure in the offensive backfield.
Absolutely. You talk about the defensive players out there. We should put out that as good as Timp was, he actually did something he'd never done before against the Demon Deacons. He got his first interception. And, you talk about Mike Eugeni. Well, he and Stephen Ricciardi and Hayden Pierce, they each got 4 tackles in the game against Wake Forest, which was an excellent performance. And Ricciardi also managed to get a sack in that game, and that is exactly what you're pointing out. They need to do more of that if they plan to win games down the stretch. And, this was a really disappointing loss, I think, because they could easily be 2-1. If they beat Yale, they'd be 3-1, and they'd be halfway to where they need to be to become bowl eligible. That's a huge, huge situation for them right now. Now, if they go into Yale, it's now become a must-win situation against Yale. They have to win this game to pull back to 500 to come 2-2, and it's the kind of pressure you don't need. It's the kind of situation that really they shouldn't be in this situation. And unfortunately, the coach pointed out that he thought that it was a case of fundamentals, that people weren't getting used to the new system. They weren't getting used to foot movement. They weren't getting used to to hand movement, and these were the things that he thought were the problems late in the game against the Demon Deacons in the 10 points that they gave up in the fourth quarter. We're going to find out on Saturday whether or not that's true or not, but they really need to correct it no matter what.
Well, yes, and listening to Coach Munkin's comments at the press conference on Tuesday, one of his comments, we certainly didn't play a perfect football game and made some mistakes that really cost us. Everyone who watched the game saw those and recognized those things that were really out in the open. The fumbled ball, missing a kick, not executing on special teams, and getting some big plays hit on us. It always comes down to things we talk about every week, not playing our assignments exactly as we need every time. Coach has mentioned that he actually has tests of players on paper before practice, make sure that they know their assignments on each play and for some of the different calls. But again, it's learning new terminology from last year with the players, especially the seniors, were used to for 3 years. And so it's trying to get that so they do things by instinct.
And, Ken, getting back to the running back situation, it's troubling to me when I look at the total rushes by player. Dixon has 55. I understand that. He ran for quite a few yards in the past, over 1,000 yards. But Angel Santiago, the quarterback, he's got 41 rushes after 3 games so far, whereas Baggett has 16, Maples has 15. This has got to change. If it doesn't change, Army will not win.
And part of that is to get the ball to Baggett and to Maples, it's usually on a pitch out. And I think they are a little concerned about having the ball in the air in the backfield, whereas they can, it's a handoff to Larry Dixon, or it's Santiago running the ball himself, which he's pretty comfortable doing. I mean, he spent a couple of years watching Trent Steelman run the ball and adopted a lot of those kind of moves. So that's kind of his style.
And it's also troubling, Ken, to me, because we've got a situation where over the last 2 weeks, 5 players have left the Army team. They haven't left the academy, they've left the team. We've lost sophomore quarterback Matt Kaufman, sophomore linebacker Malcolm Hudson, senior wide receiver Mike Paros, and freshman running backs Nehemiah Brown and Jake Taylor. And either they're not getting along with the coach, they don't like the system, or there's some other problem here. To lose 5 players like this in the middle of the season, that's very troubling.
Well, I think part of it is just realizing what academy life is, the demands, everything you have to do, especially as an underclassman before school in the morning, the military drills, the commitment to learning discipline is so extraordinary that some who may not feel like they're going to be able to contribute to the team may decide to try something else. Or as you know at the academies, if you do leave the football team, you can stay as a student, which is different than if you're on a standard athletic scholarship at a civilian university. Now, one of the things that was a terrific piece of news today is that the National Football Foundation announced its semifinalists for the 2014 Campbell Trophy, college football's premier college athlete award. Of course, Army's Andrew Rodriguez won this award 3 years ago. Andrew, defensive lineman for Army, and just an extraordinary student by every account. I know he was, I think he was actually over a 4.0.
Absolutely. He was, I think if I remember correctly, a 4.13, which was just stunning when you think about it. Getting that kind of academic score and still succeeding in the military environment that is West Point.
And he was so well respected for coming back from a serious back injury so that he could play serious football almost all of his senior year. So he was the winner of the Campbell Trophy as well as the Sullivan Award as the nation's top amateur athlete that year. But this year, Army's candidate for this award is Terry Baggett, the senior running back from Chicago. Terry is such a joy to meet and talk with. If you go to our page on West Point Football Report or on YouTube, we have an interview with Terry. And he is a chemical engineering major. And when we talk to him, he always says that he does 2 things at West Point, is study and play football. And I guess he has to do the military duties as well. Very well-respected cadet. So we hope and believe he will be a serious candidate for the Campbell Trophy offered by the National Football Foundation. That award given out just before the Army-Navy game in past years.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a situation where it inspires everyone as to what Army life is all about. This is the sort of thing, a scholar athlete is exactly the sort of leader that Army hopes to use the football program to create, and these are the things that are used as inspiration for other officers in the Army.
Okay, and one of the groups at West Point we love to talk about is the West Point Band. They've had an extraordinary couple of weeks. They sent a group, including Colonel Keene, their director, to Japan to participate in a series of concerts. And then the Hellcats, part of the Hellcats, the drum team from West Point, went over to Edinburgh, Scotland, and performed in some of the military tattoo exercises and concerts there, which was a great honor for them, great opportunity. And then recently they came back. There was a distinguished guest from Indonesia at West Point this week, and the band was complimented by the guest by saying it was the best rendition of the Indonesian anthem that they had ever heard.
It might have been the only rendition of the Indonesian anthem that they ever heard. So that you have to take that with a grain of salt.
Outside of the host country, obviously, but the West Point Band has another interesting event, a couple events up at Yale. They're going to have a concert Friday night. That is at Woolsey Hall at Yale University in collaboration with the Yale University, one of their orchestras. And then Saturday, they are going to be performing as part of the halftime show at the Yale Bowl with the Yale Band, and that should be quite something. As this is the 100th anniversary of the Yale Bowl, one of the famous football stadiums in America, the first circular stadium of its type. I believe it's got to be a model for the Rose Bowl. A Rose Bowl just being a 90,000-seat version of basically the same type of stadium. And big football games in its first 50 years when the Ivy League competed for national championships. But then I think of some famous Jet Giant games in the late 60s, early 70s, when that was a huge preseason rivalry. And, of course, many New York Giant fans think of going up to the Yale Bowl for a couple of years when Yankee Stadium was being rebuilt and the first Meadowlands Stadium was still under construction. The Giants actually played a full season and part of a second season at Yale Bowl. So it was 60,000 Giant fans trekking up to New Haven. And actually, Yale Bowl is a great place to watch a football game. Great sidelines, and so I'm really looking forward to going back there. I haven't been there in a while, so it's going to be quite a treat to go to the Yale Bowl and see the commemorations. Yale has got, just like West Point, has got tremendous traditions, and each of its classes and its football team seniors from each class year during the course of the season are going to be recognized, and we'll also remember some of the very early games. Football Yale goes back way into the 19th century, and so looking forward to going up there. What have you been there, John?
Not since a Giants game many decades ago.
Okay, so we both have that frame of reference, but the West Point Band will be performing, and that will also be performing at the Ball State game and at the Rice game. And if you go, 9 o'clock is the review on the plane. So if you can get to West Point early and get down there, you can see the parade of cadets with the music, the amazing marching music provided by the West Point Band. That starts at 9 o'clock for those two games. And they will also perform in the Columbus Day Parade in New York City on October 13th. So we always enjoy promoting the events of the West Point Band and also seeing them perform at West Point.
You're exactly right, Ken. And while the band is significant and certainly inspirational for Army, it's also inspirational for the other service academies. And this is a good time to talk about what those other service academies did this past weekend. Navy played Rutgers. They went to Rutgers to New Jersey, and they fell to the Scarlet Knights 31-24. Quarterback Keenan Reynolds, who was injured in the game against Temple 2 games earlier. He came back and went 12 for 22 for 231 yards with a touchdown. But the midshipmen did manage to lose running back Paul James. His replacement, Justin Goodwin, ran for 104 yards and 26 carries. And this week, the midshipmen host the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers on Saturday. I'm sure that they're expecting to win there. Air Force, on the other hand, managed to get a 48-38 victory past Georgia State. Their quarterback, senior Cale Pearson, threw for 2 touchdowns and added 2 scoring runs. He was 12 for 15 for 224 yards. He's now had back-to-back 200-yard passing games. He's the first quarterback to do that in several years. Sophomore tailback Jacoby Owens had his second straight 100-plus rushing performance, and junior wide receiver Jalen Robinette recorded his first 100-yard receiving game with 4 catches and a career-high 118 yards. They host Boise State on Saturday.
And, of course, Air Force will be at Michie Stadium on November 1st. It's always a tremendous game. The amount of traditions and activities at those games as the two academies really have fun at each other's expense during the course of the game. Of course, at the end of the game, they stand shoulder to shoulder singing alma maters of each school, and they are competing for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, which is given to the school, which wins the round robin, wins 2 games. And Army would dearly love to win it. With all the seniors on this team, that is one of their goals, is to beat Air Force and then to break the streak and beat Navy. And this group of seniors, especially as we get a little closer to it, they're going to be thinking more and more about being able to beat Air Force and then finding a way to break the streak and beating Navy.
Well, that Air Force game is very important to them, and Army put out a news release earlier today, or actually late in the afternoon, basically saying that game is almost sold out. So if anybody has intentions of going to that game, they'd better buy their ticket sooner. They might be out of luck.
And just going down some of the scores of some of Army's opponents, Buffalo defeated Norfolk State. They had a nice win, 36-7. They're 2-2. Stanford was idle. Wake Forest, of course, defeated Army. Yale had a tremendous win over Lehigh. We'll talk more about that in a minute. 54-43. They came back from being down 28-7 early in the game, and Coach Monken talked about that being able to come back from that type of deficit to get back in the game and then to eventually win was an extraordinary performance on their opening day. Rice, who we'll see in a couple of weeks, now 0-3. They lost to Old Dominion, a game they probably thought they could win. They've had some tough opponents like Notre Dame. Lost to Old Dominion 45-42. And Kent State, another school that has been very good in the recent past but struggling this year, 0-3, lost to Alabama 66-0. As we see the top 5 conference teams starting to win by bigger margins against the conferences that are not in the top 5, more of the mid-majors, even within Division I. Air Force defeated Georgia State, as you said, John, 48-38. Connecticut lost again. They're 1-3. They lost to South Florida 17-14. They're going to play Temple this week. Of course, we're going to see Connecticut down at Yankee Stadium in November, and that's going to be an interesting game for Army. And both teams, as they desperately try to win games to try to be bowl eligible. Western Kentucky lost to Middle Tennessee State, another big scoring game, 50-47. And Fordham defeated Columbia 49-7 as Columbia played its opening game. Fordham we'll see in November at Michie Stadium, and they will be at Holy Cross. And across Navy, as you said, lost to Rutgers 31-24. They'll be at Western Kentucky. And that was a rebound game for Rutgers. They lost a very tough game to Penn State at home, a game they thought they had won, and Penn State got back in it and had a late touchdown. Rutgers has to win a couple of games. They have Tulane this week, and then they go into their welcome to the Big Ten stretch where they've got Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, and Wisconsin consecutively. That's like playing 4 bowl games in 4 weeks in a row.
It's brutally difficult for them. From Army's standpoint, I think the most significant game this week is going to be the Navy-Western Kentucky game, simply by the fact that Western Kentucky is a common opponent for both teams. So how Navy does could be a gauge as to how Army thinks it could do, and I'm sure they'll be paying close attention to that game tape afterwards. But the reality is that, Coach Monken, just like his predecessors, only focuses on the current game, and that's what they're going to be focusing on this week, how they're going to deal with Yale.
And looking at Yale, a strong offensive team, a team that did give up a lot of points, especially early against Lehigh. Yale threw for 356 yards. They ran for 327 yards. So they can move the football.
But Ken, it's important to recognize that Lehigh is 0-3, and they have given up over 600 yards to all 3 of their opponents. Lehigh is not very good defensively this year, so we really don't know how good Yale is, because Yale is just one of 3 teams that all of which have given up or scored, amassed 600 or plus yards against them. We'll find out this weekend how they do. The reality is that their quarterback, Morgan Roberts, he completed 30 of 39 passes for 356 yards and three scores. 13 passes were caught by Dion Randall, who had 152 receiving yards and had 20 yards rushing. So he's been done pretty well from the backfield. Running back Tyler Varga had 152 yards on 19 carries with 1 score. And sophomore Chandler Rich tallied 140 yards with a touchdown on just 11 runs. He seems to be a big play kind of running back. He's a sophomore. We'll see a lot out of him. Defensively, the Bulldogs really had a difficult time. The Eli's out there. They had 3 interceptions, one of which was by Foyesade Ulakun, who had 12 tackles. Try and say that name 3 times fast, Ken. The other 2 interceptions were by defensive back Spencer Rimjewski and Robert Reese. So these are the guys to look for. But Army really doesn't have a lot of scouting material to go for, because while Army was playing its first 2 games, Yale didn't start. Their first and only game so far was last week against Lehigh. It was impressive, but we need to take into account that the team they were playing with really isn't the top-notch team this year.
Well, I think for Army's sake, they just want to come away from this game with a W. They also want to feel better about themselves going into 2 very tough home games coming up. They want to get the offense fully in sync, get the offensive line comfortable entirely instinctively with the offense. They want to see Angel Santiago work his pitch outs, as you said, get Terry Baggett into the game and Ray Maples into the game. 2 of the most outstanding runners that we've seen running wide. They also want to see if they can get a passing game going. I don't think they can beat Ball State or Rice by throwing for 18 yards like they did the last 2 weeks per game. They've got to get, as you've been saying, they did against Buffalo, getting to about 100 yards passing keeps the defense honest, keeps the linebackers from just trying to run stop, has them playing a little bit further back, has the safeties playing a little bit further back. If they feel they've got to watch for the pass as well as the running play.
I'm not convinced that Angel Santiago really has the throwing arm to succeed at that level across the length of an entire season. I think A.J. Shure is going to be the guy. If they want to keep the defenses honest, he's going to be the guy because he seems to have the stronger arm and, to me, the more accurate arm as well.
Well, we'll see. We might see some of A.J. Shure in the game just for that reason, to see if he can get the passing game going for Army and give Army that look that they're going to need in some of these very challenging games coming up on the schedule. Other element for the defense is finding a way for the defense to pressure the passer, to find ways to get in the backfield and use the strength that they have. We need to see more out of Mike Eugeni. Mike's put on a lot of strength and weight, 6'3", 297 now for Mike Eugeni, number 92 at the end position. And then Rich Glover, TJ Altamala. They've been pretty good about holding the middle on the rushing defense. But then we got to see something. We had a chance to visit Tuesday practice with James Kelly from Colorado. He's done a good job. But again, he's the guy who faces those big guards that are leading the running plays. And it's quite a challenge for him on rushing defense. But he's got to be able to try to put some pressure on the quarterback from his end position. And then watching the young interior linebackers for Army, number 11, Andrew King from Queens, and number 39, Jeremy Timpf, who have played very well, have really solidified what had been an area of concern, the inside linebacker positions, where Army has struggled, especially last year. So that's something that we can see. And then the defensive backs have got to work on their pass defense. And this is a good chance to try to shut down a very good offensive team, but one which is very unusual. Army should have more athletic ability than Yale in this game, so we're going to be interested to see those matchups. Hey, I got to mention, we're talking about the Army linebackers, and our friend Colby Miller, who graduated in May, is in the middle of his Ranger training down south. And he got through one phase of the training in the mountains, and he's going to his swamp training, which, for all we've heard about Ranger training in the United States Army, is very challenging. But he's doing well. They said he's lost some weight, which is part of the deal in going through these tough Army training programs. Basically, they don't get a lot of sleep, they don't get a lot to eat, and they show that they can continue to lead soldiers and make correct decisions under very adverse and challenging circumstances. So our best wishes to Colby Miller and several other Army cadets that are in the middle of Army Ranger training. And, of course, we think about all of our U.S. military serving overseas right now, a lot of West Point grads involved in everything that we hear on the news. So our best wishes and prayers to all the U.S. military serving overseas.
And Ken, that story emphasizes something that you and I see at every home game at Michie Stadium. When the players rush out onto the field, they all go on both sides of a cadet who holds up a metal plaque. And on that metal plaque it says, I want an officer for a secret and dangerous mission. I want a West Point football player. That was said by George Marshall, Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army in World War II. And when you tell these stories about these former players who go on to things like Ranger training, it just emphasizes that football is a means to teach these young men how to be the great leaders, how to be the people that we need to have in the military and lead our nation.
Absolutely. So our best wishes to all serving the U.S. military, and especially our grads of West Point football. Now, Saturday, 1 o'clock, the Yale Bowl. A great chance, if you live nearby, to drive to an away game. And I'm sure there'll be tickets available. You may want to call ahead or check online with Yale on tickets. But a great chance to see a historic stadium, a great setting for college football. I imagine there's going to be a real big crowd up there. And so it should be a lot of fun and a great chance to see and root for the Army Black Knights on the road as they attempt to go to 2-2 on the season and set themselves up for a chance to win the games they need to qualify for the bowl game in Fort Worth. And so we'll look forward to that. Should be a lot of fun this weekend. As with most of these things, you want to get there early. And I learned today that there's going to be about 1,000 cadets from West Point going to the game. And as they do, they're going to march from their buses. They're going to do a little parade going to the stadium and then around through some of the areas where the festivities are going on. So a lot of fans will get a chance to see the Army cadets march in their company formations into the stadium, and then I'm sure they're doing a march on. There's also going to be a parachute drop by the Army parachute team into the stadium. As we mentioned earlier, the West Point Band will be performing. So it's something, it should be an interesting day. I was looking forward to this from the day I heard 2 years ago that they'd be part of the festivities for the 100th anniversary of the Yale Bowl going up there. I knew it would be a fun day.
Absolutely. Yale has one of the great football traditions in America, as does Notre Dame, as does USC, as does Army. Army is one of the landmark places. When Sports Illustrated listed the 10 places you must visit as a sports fan before you die, they had Michie Stadium for a football game at number 3. And Yale, for a football game, has the same sort of tradition up there. It's important that if people go there, it'll certainly be a memorable experience no matter what happens, and hopefully it'll be for an Army victory.
Yeah, so often today with the way the conferences have changed college sports, it's hard now to drive to an away game. So many of the away games, think of what West Virginia does. They have to fly 1,000 miles to their closest conference opponent. But here we have a chance to drive up there, so we're going to be heading up there early, and it should be fun. So the Yale Bulldogs and the Army Black Knights, 1 o'clock at the Yale Bowl in New Haven, Connecticut. John Charan and I will be up there, and look forward to following us on West Point Football Report on Facebook. We'll also have a Blog Talk radio show at 8 o'clock on Sunday night where we can talk a little bit about the game and hear your comments about the game. Just look West Point Football Report up on Blog Talk Radio, and you can call in and tell us your thoughts about the Army-Yale game on Saturday. So this is Ken Kreitzer with John Charan for Sons of the American Legion Radio and our West Point Football Report. We're a program of Squadron 135 in White Plains, New York, and we are recording this tonight in downtown White Plains at Bob Hyland's Sports Page Restaurant. Good night, everybody, and go Army, beat Yale.